in the heart of bustling Meow York, where skyscrapers scraped the clouds and taxis zipped like frantic fireflies, there was a tiny restaurant that held a very big reputation. Welcome, my friends, to the Purrfect Plate, home to the most celebrated chef in the city, the one and only Whiskers. Whiskers, a fluffy tabby with the softest fur and the most discerning palate, surveyed his domain. A tiny, crisp white chef's hat was perched jauntily between his ears. This kitchen wasn't just a place of pots and pans. It was his stage, his sanctuary, the very soul of his culinary art. But today, a shadow of doubt clouded his usually bright green eyes, a tremor of trepidation, a feeling he hadn't felt in years, ran through his pores. The reason for his unease, the annual Golden Spatula competition. It was the most prestigious event in the culinary world, a battle of taste, talent, and technique. And this year, his arch-rival, the notoriously cunning chef Reginald Ratter, was rumored to be concocting something truly, devastatingly extraordinary. Whispers in the alleyways spoke of imported truffles and exotic spices that could make a grown cat weep with joy. How could Whiskers possibly compete? "Cheer up, Whiskers," a bright voice chirped from the prep station. It was Squeaky, his loyal sous-chef, a sprightly squirrel with a bushy tail and an even bushier sense of optimism. He was meticulously chopping a miniature mushroom with a precision that would make any human chef envious. "You're the best." Squeaky continued, his little nose twitching. "Remember your famous salmon soufflé surprise. No one can beat that. It's legendary." Whiskers managed a weak smile, the corners of his mouth barely twitching upwards. The salmon soufflé surprise was indeed his masterpiece, a delicate cloud of fish and air that had won him the Golden Spatula 2 years in a row. "Thanks, Squeaky," he sighed, his voice a low rumble. "I appreciate the vote of confidence. But this year I need more than just a classic. I need something new. Something ... magical." He paced the checkered floor, his tail tracing anxious patterns in the air. His gaze swept over the familiar jars of catnip, the neatly arranged tins of tuna, the shiny copper pots hanging from the ceiling. It all felt ... ordinary. Uninspired, he needed a spark, a divine intervention, a sign from the great culinary muses above. And just as despair began to creep into his fluffy chest, a peculiar aroma wafted from a forgotten corner of the pantry. It wasn't the smell of fish or cream or even Squeaky's toasted acorns. It was a scent of old parchment, sweet dust, and a faint hint of something ... otherworldly. Curiosity, the quintessential cat trait, finally got the better of him. His ears perked up, and with his tail swishing gently, Whiskers padded silently towards the source of the mysterious fragrance. The pantry was a treasure trove of culinary history. Behind a towering stack of ancient cookbooks, their pages yellowed and brittle with age, he found it. Tucked away in the shadows was a small, glowing recipe box. It wasn't made of ordinary wood. It seemed to be carved from polished moonwood, inlaid with whimsical symbols that swirled and danced in the faint light. A soft, warm energy hummed from within, making Whiskers' fur stand on end. "What's this?" Squeaky asked, having scurried over to see what had captured his boss's attention. He peered over Whiskers' shoulder, his eyes wide with wonder. With a paw that trembled ever so slightly, Whiskers carefully nudged the lid open. The hum grew a little louder, and the warm glow intensified, bathing their faces in a gentle, silvery light. Inside, nestled on a bed of what looked like shimmering stardust, was a single aged scroll. It was tied with a ribbon spun from what could only be a strand of twilight. As Whiskers delicately unrolled it, a faint ethereal glow illuminated the delicate looping calligraphy written upon its surface. The words seemed to almost sing off the page. It was a recipe for Moonbeam Muffins, an ancient dish so old that it was thought to be only a myth, a fairy tale told to kitten chefs. A dish rumored to grant wishes to those who were pure of heart and consumed them under the light of a full moon. Moonbeam Muffins, Whiskers whispered, his voice filled with a mixture of awe and disbelief. His eyes, wide as saucers, reflected the shimmering script. He looked at Squeaky, whose jaw had dropped so far his tiny chin was practically resting on the floor. "This could be it," Squeaky, Whiskers declared, a new fire igniting in his gaze. "This could be our magic." Their excitement, however, was quickly tempered by a glance at the ingredient list. This wasn't your standard flour and sugar affair. The recipe called for things that couldn't be found at the local Meow Mart. First on the list, 3 drops of pure starlight nectar. Next, a pinch of enchanted thyme. And finally, the most peculiar ingredient of all, the single crystalline tear of a joyful onion. "Well," Squeaky squeaked, tapping a tiny finger against his chin. "This is going to be an adventure," and an adventure it was. Their quest for the mystical ingredients began at dawn the very next day. For the starlight nectar, they had to journey to the highest peak of the Whispering Woods, a place where the stars felt so close you could almost touch them. They waited patiently until a star shed a few shimmering droplets into a silver leaf Whiskers held out. Next was the enchanted thyme. This led them to the tangled garden of a notoriously grumpy garden gnome. After a long and complicated negotiation, which involved trading 3 of Squeaky's prize-winning, perfectly toasted walnuts, the gnome grumbled and handed over a fragrant sprig of the magical herb. The final ingredient proved to be the trickiest. How do you make an onion cry with joy? They tried everything. They presented it with a beautiful bouquet of flowers. They sang it, a cheerful song. Nothing worked. Finally, Whiskers, remembering a joke he'd once heard from a traveling Persian cat, leaned in close and whispered it into the onion's papery ear. A moment of silence, and then the onion began to shake. It wasn't a sad tremble, but a happy, rollicking shudder, and a single, perfect, joyful tear rolled down its side, which Squeaky carefully collected in a tiny vial. Back in the gleaming kitchen of the Purrfect Plate, with the competition looming, a sense of reverent silence fell. Whiskers, with the focus of a true master, began to combine the mystical ingredients. He gently stirred the starlight nectar into the flour, watching as it created shimmering vortexes. He added the pinch of enchanted thyme, which released a scent of warm summer evenings and forgotten dreams. Finally, he added the joyful onion's tear. The moment it touched the batter, the entire bowl began to shimmer with an ethereal, pearlescent glow. It was beautiful, mesmerizing. As Whiskers carefully poured the luminous batter into the muffin tins, a chorus of tiny, melodious chimes filled the air, as if 100 tiny bells were ringing in celebration. The aroma that filled the kitchen was indescribable, sweet, spicy, and full of a hopeful promise that made their hearts feel light and full. Whiskers and Squeaky exchanged a look. This was more than just a recipe. This was real magic. The golden spatula was within reach. Thank you so much for joining us on this culinary adventure. If you loved this story, do not forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more magical tales from the world of cooking. We'll see you in the next video.